Hey, welcome everyone today. My name's Dr. Emily Corrigan-Kavanagh. Today I'll be talking to you about some research I did on exploring sound sensing AI for home well-being using participatory design research approaches. I've had lots of assistance in doing this research. I have some colleagues below. Oh, sorry, one second. We're actually at the beginning. One moment. We're actually at the beginning of the presentation. So let me just correct that. There we go. We'll try that again. That's better. Now we should be able to actually see the names of some of the colleagues that I've worked with at the end of the presentation there, just under my name. So, such as Dr. Thomas Deakin, Dr. Arshdeep Singh, Andreas Fernandez, uh, Gabrielle Bibbo, Professor Mark Plumley, Dr. Helen Cooper, and Professor David Froelich. As you can see, lots of different people with different expertise have been vital in supporting me throughout this research. So I just wanted to give them a bit of recognition. So a little bit of background about me. I'm a design researcher by background. I actually have a BA in visual communication. I have a master's in design critical practice from Goldsmiths University, and I have a PhD in designing for home well-being and creative research methods. I completed this at Loughborough University. And basically, since I finished my PhD, my whole kind of mission has been to bridge the gap between end users and technology developers to basically make sure that any technology that is developed with the needs of people in mind, to basically put them at the center of new technologies. So I started my academic career, I suppose, at the design school at Loughborough University. And then I took on a research position at the Digital Research Centre at University of Surrey, and I'm now based at the new People-Centred AI Institute at University of Surrey. My current research is looking at how we design for people-centered AI and looking at how to establish this basically as an interdisciplinary field, integrating design and AI research. And if you want to hear more about sort of my overall philosophy behind this, I actually have a TEDx talk on designing AI for well-being more generally, and you can find that quite easily on YouTube. But now let's move on to sound sensing AI. So we now have the ability with artificial intelligence that we can actually recognize different acoustic scenes and events using artificial intelligence. So basically, we can use AI systems to tell us whether or not the sounds that we hear, whether they're in a bus, an office, or a home. We can also tag different types of sounds within that sound event, or sorry, that sound scene. And we can also categorize different sound events within sound scenes. So basically, when a piece of speech started and finished, when a bird started to sing, and when it finished. So we can use AI to recognize those and tag those. And this is all sorts of applications in things like security. So we will it can tell whether or not, say, an unusual incident occurred, such as glass broke or a smoke alarm went off. We can also use it in things like medical sounds to kind of monitor the health of, say, heart and lungs. We can use it in traffic through autonomous driving. And in the home, assisted living is one that is gaining a lot of momentum. So again, monitoring the human activity. We know if someone has had a fall or there's unusual activity based on the sounds that they're making as they move through the home. And then in the environment, we can use this to monitor the biodiversity, such as what kind of birds, sounds, and insects are there, and the impact of noise on those particular environments. And then in multimedia and kind of creative production, we can use it to find different types of video and sound snippets and search for those. Now, the work I did on sound sensing AI took a soundscape approach rather than a noise-based approach. And this basically means that rather than just looking at the decibel level of sounds in the environment, we're also looking at how people perceive those sounds. So not just how loud something is. And this is important because the sound level alone, it doesn't really tell us the whole picture of how people feel emotionally or physiologically or they experience things physiologically in relation to a sound. For example, if you were at a rock concert versus being exposed to, say, a plane taking off, if they're of the same decibel level, you might have a very different emotional reaction to these events based on what they mean to you. So if you like rock music, you might really enjoy that experience. But if, say, a plane is taking off over your home and you're trying to relax, you're not going to enjoy that experience. Similarly, if you went to actually view planes taking off, you could enjoy the sound of a plane taking off. But say you don't like rock music, if someone started blaring rock music next to you, you're not going to enjoy it. Again, these two events could have the same decibel of sound, but depending on our own personal preferences, we might not enjoy them in the same way. So again, instead of thinking of a sound-based approach, instead of a noise-based approach, we're taking a soundscape approach. So this is where we perceive the sound as a resource rather than a waste. And we're focusing on preferred sounds instead of the sounds of discomfort. Again, we're looking at how people judge the sounds rather than just the level of that sound. And we're working towards emphasizing wanted sounds and not allowing them to be masked by unwanted sounds instead of reducing the noise levels or just focusing on that. So now I just want to touch on what's meant by designing AI for well-being, or at least kind of what I mean by designing AI for well-being. So I don't just mean about supporting people's physiological well-being. I mean about like kind of well-being in a holistic way. So how we gear artificial intelligence towards making it people-centered rather than kind of technology-led. There can be a tendency, and people are breaking this tradition, but there can be a tendency with new technologies to focus on what the technology can do and build it in relation to what it can do rather than the actual needs it's trying to satisfy or support in society. So that just means that we can build things that say work really well or really efficient or really accurate, but they might not actually allow for a huge amount of benefit to the people. They might not be what people really want or expect. So within AI development, I would argue if we look at, say, the double diamond design process that's been put forward by the Design Research Council, where we go through there are different phases that we go through when we're designing any particular artifact, and I'm applying this to technology, where we have a discovery phase where we kind of research what we think the issue should be. We have a defining phase of what we think the problem should be. We have an ideation phase of where we develop ideas to kind of solve that problem. And then we have a prototyping phase where we kind of prototype out what we've developed in that ideation phase. And again, this is an iterative process where we go back and forth, we test out what we've done, see if that works, and then we go back again. Usually, what can happen with AI is that we get all the way to the prototyping stage and it's not working very well because we've not actually consulted people throughout that process. So what I'm arguing for is that we consult people throughout that developmental process and throughout the discovery phase. We might even go back to the core problem, the core issue at the very beginning, and ask people from the very beginning, what is it that we should actually be using this technology for, and how do they feel in certain situations? Um, so again, back to one of the points I have up here on the slide, we engage people before we gather any data that we're going to use to train AI systems. And we're employing feedback from people throughout the design process stages. And this is to support and enhance, ideally, AI systems that will improve people's competency, their capability, and their autonomy. Because we really don't want to use AI systems to replace people necessarily. We wanted to emphasize or kind of extend what we're already capable of doing. I now want to touch on the concept of home well-being and again what it means to me in relation to research that I did back during my PhD. And again, this kind of underpins a lot of research of what I do around home well-being now. So the way I view home well-being, again, it's a very kind of holistic way, is that it refers to the way in which the home and the local community can support a wide range of both physiological and basic needs. So basic needs include things like security, sustenance, and rest. And psychological needs would include things like social connection, autonomy, creativity. And this links very much with a particular version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you have the basic needs at the bottom, under kind of physiological needs. And then that also includes security and safety needs. And then further up, we have needs around psychological needs, which include things like love and belonging, esteem and self-actualization. And what I did during my PhD research, which was 6 years ago now, is that I aligned people's different activities that they did in the home and the surrounding community in relation to these different needs. And it looks something like this essentially. So under basic needs, we had things like cooking and food preparation, we had resting, sleeping, we had cleaning and tidying. And then moving into kind of more the kind of security area, we had being familiar with your locality, such as knowing your neighbors. We had things like home repairs, security installations, healthcare. And moving into psychological needs, we had things like spending time with friends and extended family, time with immediate family, decorating your home with symbolic artifacts. When we came into things like esteem, it was basically being able to kind of achieve goals, but kind of having this kind of positive um, evaluation of fulfilling your activities below this. So once you knew you were kind of fulfilling these, it would allow you then to express gratitude, engage in acts of kindness. Again, a lot of these things were shown to really support well-being on a kind of a higher level once you've moved from the bottom all the way up in other research studies as well. And then moving all the way up into kind of self-actualization. And at the very top, is when you've been able to support all these activities below, you feel able to pursue personal interests or engage or use, say, your strengths for a greater cause, like engage in charity work. Again, generally speaking, I'm not saying this is the case in every single situation, but generally speaking, if you're able to fulfill all the activities below, you're in a much better frame of mind, or your desire is much higher to then go do personal activities, engage in charity work, or engage in acts of kindness, generally speaking. I now want to touch on, there's lots of concepts in this research, so please bear with me, we're nearly there. I would now want to touch on participatory design. And this is basically rooted in a lot of participatory research. Only in participatory design, we're trying to create an actual designed artifact. So very similar to participatory research. So again, we're engaging end users, what we would say in design research, end users, basically those who are going to use the design product. So we call them end users throughout the design process, and we get them involved in the decision making. So this is different to co-design because they're not designing directly with us, but they are playing quite a big role in making decisions about what we will design. So I would differentiate participatory design from co-design. I don't use them interchangeably. I do think there is a difference. And essentially, when we use participatory design, we mean that we're engaging in research for design that is participant-led rather than expert-led. It's about having this kind of reflective practice about what we're doing. It's about empowering our and equalizing any stakeholders that are involved. We're also trying to facilitate diverse perspectives. We're trying to implement as well a co-generation of knowledge. So it does definitely overlap with this notion of co-creation, but I still wouldn't say it's co-design at this particular point, or not, at least not what I engaged in. It also tries to kind of support things like quality listening. Again, what people are really saying, making sure that you really listen to each other and build collective understandings. And that leads me nicely to the World Cafe approach, which it has been used as a participatory research approach quite recently in qualitative research. And to the best of my knowledge, I believe I'm the first to apply it as a participatory design approach because I'm essentially trying to create, or myself and other people who've worked with me, we were trying to create design concepts from this research and getting people to help us make those decisions along the way and being quite open with them about those kind of decisions we were trying to make. So the World Cafe approach has about six core principles to it that I've listed here. And it's set in a cafe-esque environment where you get lots of different people together who you think can answer the question that you're about to pose in relation to your research or say the design artifact that you might be trying to make. And you divide them up into maybe no more than five people per group. You sit them physically at tables, ideally, if you can do it face to face. The host sets the context, basically, that everybody has an equal voice. and that we need to practice quality listening during this cafe. The host will then pose a question and get everybody to discuss this question in three 20-minute rounds. At each table, there is a table chair who will keep everybody to time. So each person gets to speak uninterrupted for maybe 4 to 5 minutes during that question round, after which time, and this leads to one of the points up on the board here, which encourages everybody's contribution. After which time, everybody apart from the chair for that table will switch to a different table, and the whole routine continues again. And this happens 3 times. And again, this is to facilitate quality listening. And the creation of a hospitable space, that's usually, again, one of the points I've put here on the slide, that's usually down to the host at the beginning, kind of setting the context. And the switching between tables, the notion behind this is to connect diverse perspectives. And then at the end of these discussion rounds, normally you would have what's called a harvest session, where each table chair will give the overall insights of what that table discussed with all these different people coming and going. And then there will be an open discussion had by everybody where everybody shares kind of collective discoveries, and this kind of you have this cross-pollination of ideas. And ideally, you want to come out with kind of some sort of solution to the question you've posed to that problem. Now, this was done during the COVID pandemic. So we had to create a virtual world cafe method, which was a little bit different to your face-to-face method. We ran 2 of these. Our virtual world cafe was 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It used Zoom. It had a 15-minute introduction just to set the context. We had three 20-minute breakout rooms, so we had virtual breakout rooms. And instead of moving people in and out of these rooms, we kept everybody in the same room, as in we divided them into, I think we had 3 rooms in total, 3 groups of 4, because we had 12 participants for this particular virtual world cafe. And we put them in the different rooms. And we would give them a question to discuss for 20 minutes, after which point they would come out of that room back into the main room. They would share what they had discussed during a 10-minute mini harvest session. We repeated that 3 times. And then at the very end, we had a 20-minute harvest session where everybody had a general discussion about what was said. In order to facilitate this, we had one technical support person moving people in and out of the rooms. We had one host who was doing the introduction, inviting people to speak. Um, we had 3 table chairs. They were nominated participants that would keep everybody to time during each breakout room session. And then we had 3 scribes where they were part of the research team. And they were taking notes of what was said during each breakout room. And then during the mini harvest sessions, then they were able to give a kind of a summary of what was going on. And this was quite useful in that it sensitized the researchers as well to what was being discussed and what was being said. And then during the mini harvest sessions, or sure, the main harvest session, if there was any mistakes that had been made, obviously participants then had a chance to kind of say, well, actually, no, that's I don't agree with that. That wasn't really what we covered, you know. So it was a really interesting discussion session at the end. And for this particular virtual world cafe, we had 12 residents from Guildford. We had 6 males and 6 females, so it was nice gender balance. And the age ranges were between 16 and or 18 and 16. And we did this again where we were exploring kind of more work-based practices. The first was very much based on home. The second one, then, where we had 14 UK-based workers with office experience, we were looking at working practices. But because there has been such a transition to remote working, particularly for people in office-based working environments, you know, where they're kind of knowledge workers, we were able to almost bring them together to look at kind of home well-being, because this kind of transition we've gone through during COVID and then post-COVID is quite interesting, where work has kind of started to blend very much into kind of home life. So we thought it was interesting to kind of consider these two together at the same time. For this particular sample, the age range was 25 to 60. We had again nice balance. We had 7 males, 7 females. And then we also used scribes and table chairs again in the same manner for this, but this time we had 4 breakout rooms instead of 3 because we had more people. Um, so the questions that we asked during both virtual world cafes were very similar. The first question that we asked people to discuss for the first round of break or sort of first breakout room discussions was describe the sounds you hear. So again, it was the sounds people were listening to at home. Think about what natural, mechanical, or human sounds you hear and what you find pleasant or annoying about these sounds. The second question was describe your ideal listening experience. What would you add, remove, or amplify or quieten? And then why were these important? So we wanted people to think whether or not, does this make you more relaxed or is this an engaging experience? What's the sound adding to your experience right now? Why do you think that would be an ideal listening experience? And then finally, you might argue this was a bit of a jump, but it seemed to work quite well in our virtual world cafes. We asked them to imagine a new technology that would allow them to create their ideal listening experience. And obviously, this was in the context of sound sensing AI. So, what form would it take? Would it be a wearable? Would it be something in the kind of infrastructural environment? How would it work? How would you use it? And were there other kind of contexts that it might be used in? So here's some of the results that people came back with. And when we asked them to describe the sounds they heard, and these could be broken into pleasant, annoying, and neutral sounds. So pleasant sounds were very much natural sounds. So running water, rustling leaves, birds chirping, those sorts of things. Happy human sounds also came up. So that was people kind of laughing, joking, children playing. That was quite a pleasant sound. Silence was positive with these particular samples when people were sleeping. But interestingly, silence could be a negative if it was in the context of you felt just lonely and there was nobody around. It was almost kind of eerie, so it could come under annoying sounds. And then self-selected music could be very positive because obviously you get to decide what sounds you're listening to. Similarly, unsolicited music could be very annoying. I'm sure lots of us have had experiences where we're trying to focus or do something or even just relax and someone drives by in a car blaring their music that we didn't ask for. So that can be quite an annoying experience. Um, Other annoying sounds included loud or sudden mechanical sounds, such as a drill, heavy machinery, that sort of thing, or comprehensible human sound. Say if you're trying to focus on a particular task, it's very hard to not listen to what the person's saying, even though you don't want to listen to it at all. And then under neutral sounds, it was basically quiet or constant mechanical sounds, so such as I don't know, an aircon machine that's quite, again, if it's not too loud and it just vanishes into the background, you don't mind or informational mechanical sounds, such as, say, if a microwave beeps, it's telling you that something's ready, or, or a doorbell, it's alerting you to something that you need to know about. So it's not that it's annoying, it's informative, so it's kind of neutral. And incomprehensible human sounds came up in this as well. So again, it kind of vanishes into the background. It's not pleasant and it's not annoying. When we asked people to describe their ideal listening experience, so in the context of general living, a lot of people wanted to increase the clarity of natural sounds, particularly bird song, through better regulation of traffic and heavy machinery and even home appliances. When it came under the context of social interactions, group selected music was quite popular. Or the atmospheric sounds of others, because it would almost kind of feed into this kind of natural kind of social interaction, positive social interactions. It would kind of emphasize the social interactions going on, particularly during leisure time. In the context of repetitive tasks, self-selected music was quite popular because it would help the time go by fast, or you could engage yourself in that particular activity. In the context of reflective activities, people wanted mainly quiet, possibly with some natural sounds to help them focus on that particular task. And then when we asked people to imagine new technologies, people were kind of talking more about the kind of features or the capabilities that technology would have. So they really wanted a technology that could help them mask particular sounds, remove them, or maybe introduce or enhance those that they've self-selected themselves. So from that, we understood them to want a feature such as it had to be customizable. People also talked about wanting mobile, discreet, or cost-effective, or possibly wearable technology. And from that, we kind of thought, okay, well, this is something that needs to be integrated with um, ongoing home routines. They also talked about not being disconnected from the environment. So you don't want to be completely closed off from the environment. Say if you're wearing something on your head, you still want to hear what's going on. But at the same time, if you're introducing sounds, you don't want to be disturbing others. So there's this kind of pro-social element as well to what people wanted. They also wanted something that ideally would learn your personal routines because you don't want to keep inputting what you want your preferences are over time. So they wanted something intelligent that would know what your preferred sounds were at certain times of day. They also wanted something that was unintrusive. So the notion of privacy came up, obviously, when we think of anything that's recording or listening or monitoring. So they didn't want anything that recorded live sounds. But there was also this interesting notion around once you know that something's there listening, it can actually encourage pro-social behavior. And it might encourage a kind of a better kind of sound etiquette. If people know that there is something there monitoring and it will pick up on adverse sounds or sounds that are not conducive to kind of a good community, either a work environment or a good home life. And these particular characteristics we found could be mapped against that version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Because if we think about something that could integrate with current home routines, it's not necessarily supporting the basic needs, but it's not interfering either. So I thought that was interesting that it integrates with what's already happening, the things that you have to do and get done in life. Unintrusive, this notion that it's going to protect your privacy, but it's also going to support this notion of community. Again, by not kind of really listening in necessarily, but its presence might actually support kind of more kind of pro-social behaviors as well, which leads me on to uh my next feature here, talking about this kind of pro-social, again, supporting connection with others. So not disconnecting you from your immediate environment, but not creating sounds that interfere with other people. And then finally, when we get to esteem, this notion of customizable. So you can customize it depending on what you're doing, the context you're in to help you achieve goals, supporting the esteemed level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then finally, something that's intelligent so that it adapts to your changing home routines. So it's allowing you to be creative, to being spontaneous. And we had a little play around. So we actually ran some design workshops that now at this point just included the research team, but it was a mix of AI experts and design researchers. So we had some kind of interesting brainstorming activities based on that, different perspectives and ways of seeing things. Um, and one idea we came up with, again, mapping it to these different features, was a sound analyzer. So this would be a kind of intelligent device that monitors and measures known, pleasant, and annoying sounds. So those that were already identified by the participants, and it would then predict when they're likely to occur. It could also be customizable. So it would allow for subjective input from listeners to improve its accuracy of the sounds that it was categorizing as either pleasant, annoying, or neutral. It would be integrable in that it could be installed into the structural environment or wearable. Um, Non-intrusive, it wouldn't record sounds as they were, but it would identify the types rather than the actual live audio. And then pro-social, we thought maybe it could show a stress rating for different sounds in different contexts and this would inform improvements to the sound environment, but also support a better sound etiquette amongst other people. Sorry, my laptop is about to die. I'm just gonna quickly plug it in here. Just give me one moment. Okay, I'll just pop you here and we'll just go on to the next one here. Um, so another concept we came up with was called an intelligent ear defender. So this one we thought might be a wearable thing that would be transportable out of the home environment, but you might wear it within the home environment as well. And it would be intelligent in that it would remove certain annoying sounds, again, identified by the participants that we previously discussed. and any additional ones identified by the listener. It could also be customizable in that it would mask annoying sounds with maybe personalized pleasant sounds, things that the particular listener enjoys listening to. Um, it could be integrated in that it would be wearable or portable device. So again, not really kind of too disruptive to your everyday routines. And pro-social in that it would enhance important informative sounds, such as someone calling your name, and these are things that you could maybe set yourself. Finally, we have a final concept that we called a web mic, and this was more a kind of a device that could be installed into the infrastructural environment. So it would be again integrated into a pre-existing kind of social context, maybe kind of a social area in the home or office space, that sort of thing. It would be intelligent in that it would use high quality spatial audio that could be adaptable to different contexts to improve immersion in the listening experience. And this device would basically flood the area with pleasant sounds, maybe from an outdoor space. So it would be live audio with natural sounds such as parks or forests. And the reason we called it pro-social in that it would encourage social interactions in that space, kind of leisure time interactions because of those particular sounds. And it would be customizable in that it could be programmed to come on at certain times of day, during leisure periods, for example. And it would be non-intrusive, so there would be no sound recording for that particular device. But of course, AI for sound sensing is just one way in which AI could support home well-being. And I was interested in looking at how AI could be used to support home well-being more generally. And once the COVID pandemic was sort of behind us, I decided I wanted to run an actual face-to-face World Cafe with lots of different people from different backgrounds, but who were all very much experts in artificial intelligence. And I wanted to ask them the question of basically how could AI be designed for home well-being? What were kind of the opportunities, the challenges, the barriers behind that? So I arranged a World Cafe back on the 11th of July, 2022. This was accepted as part of the Institute of Advanced Studies workshop competition. So I won some money to do this. There was 20 delegates, including 11 external speakers from University of Surrey, both from academia and from industry. So we had representation from Glasgow, um, University of East London, Bristol, Hertfordshire, Birmingham. We had representation from IBM, so good selection of people there, all coming from different AI application backgrounds such as robotics, assisted technology, architecture, healthcare, sociology, knowledge discovery, and data mining. So the questions I asked as part of this World Cafe, I used two questions for this. The first question was, how could AI support home well-being for human flourishing? And what I basically mean by human flourishing, if we come back to that notion of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how could how could AI support needs for, say, physiological needs, safety and security needs, love and belonging, esteem needs, self-actualization? So again, we're coming back to food and drink preparation, resting and sleeping, tidying and eating. Um, and I gave this kind of list of stuff as well to the different AI experts just to kind of inspire different discussions around these topics and broaden it beyond just this notion of kind of general happy feeling of happiness. I wanted to go a bit further than that. The second question that I got people to discuss was, what are the barriers for designing AI for home well-being? How do we overcome these barriers and who has the barriers essentially? And I gave people prompts such as, are there time constraints attached to this? Is it lack of resources? Is there an unfamiliarity of design research among AI experts? Is there an unfamiliarity of artificial intelligence among designers and design researchers? Are there uncertainties over the value of AI or design research? And perhaps there is a lack of collaboration and dialogue amongst different stakeholders in these areas. When we got to the harvest session, I got people to discuss what themes they thought should be prioritized and why they should be prioritized. To think as well how and where do they merge with others? What problems are they trying to solve? What are the particular barriers that are trying to be addressed here? And again, a call to action of what should be done next in terms of actions, who needs to do what, could we kind of form some sort of group to bring forward some of these ideas? And during that World Cafe, I hired a graphic recorder to capture various different bits of discussion from those different discussion groups, but also the harvest session. So on the left-hand side here, this is all around how AI can support home well-being for human flourishing. In the center, we're looking at the second question, such as what are the key barriers to designing AI for home well-being? How do we come over these? How do we overcome these? And who has those barriers? And then finally, on the right-hand side, we have the harvest session, kind of some of the insights and kind of conclusions people came up with from that. So rather than letting you read all of this, there's a lot there. I'm going to go through some of the highlights now. So how can AI support home well-being for human flourishing? Under the notion of basic needs, a lot of discussion was around AI that could reduce food and energy waste through using monitoring and creation of optimizing strategies. So AI is very good for optimization. Once it gets fed various different patterns, it's very good at suggesting different ways of doing things. Around physical health, of course, AI can be used to monitor different health markers and suggest lifestyle changes, such as maybe new recipes or exercise routines. Around safety and security, it can be used in the building of specialized sensors for detecting unusual incidents in the home, such as burglary, that sort of thing. Um, Privacy and dignity came up a lot because obviously if we're going to use AI, we need to use a lot of high quality data. And we very much need to make sure that we preserve privacy and dignity of people using these AI systems through ethical use of data. Under the notion of love and belonging, AI is becoming much better, kind of scary really, at mapping people's moods and actually knowing when someone is becoming depressed even before they do. And we were talking as well about how it could then suggest interventions to build social connections or different strategies to overcome this. Around esteem and autonomy, it basically could be personalized to anybody's unique routines or kind of, lifestyle changes. So any of the things I've just suggested again could be personalized. And then under the notion of self-actualization, AI, certainly machine learning, it is adaptable, it is continuously learning. So it could change to reflect cultural, social, personal, and infrastructural changes in one's environment. Now, when we looked at things like barriers, the people who we thought had the key barriers were those such as policymakers and decision makers, AI creators and users. Now, the key barriers that policy and decision makers come up against is a lack of knowledge of AI, essentially, and also a lack of universal AI regulation. Under key barriers for AI creators, it was things such as how do we define different users and their needs and understanding what the right data could be. Also, how do you actually measure well-being through AI? How would you measure home well-being in the first place? Something that's very qualitative. And there does seem to be this lack of communication and collaboration with other disciplines, creating research silos. So lots of great research going on, very little connection between all this great research, and things are being done twice in some circumstances. And then for the users, they're very unique. And how do you actually look at that? The uniqueness of each person, each household, their well-being, their particular home, what matters to them. There are different levels as well of digital literacy. That is very important to consider as well. There's also this conflict between what people expect systems to do and the reality of what they do. And then finally, how do you communicate the value of this? Because some people f feel that, this is like a home invasion if you're introducing this type of technology. So how do you communicate that benefit? And solutions that started to be suggested was this notion of guidelines for defining and designing home well-being that could be used in policy making and for decision makers, but also in the creation of new AI for sound technologies. And in relation to that, design research toolkits seem to be really important. And that's something that I that I took from discussions, definitely, such as those that would help people conduct really good user research, identifying their needs and the right data that needs to be created. Um, Also how to create appropriate evaluation metrics. So how do you know that this AI is really going to support home well-being? How would we evaluate that? What is its success criteria? And then how do you actually collaborate with other disciplines, stakeholders, and end users? Again, design research toolkits for this. And then finally, how do we educate, empower, and include diverse groups in the co-design of AI for home well-being? As I said before, this research that we did, I would say it's only participatory design. It's not at the co-design level yet, definitely not. But there's definitely need to do this. And that kind of relates back to what I was about to say then for the harvest session conclusion. So this is basically another rundown of what we decided AI for home well-being could support. Um, and very quickly to say again, it could reduce homeful. Again, this is kind of the opportunities that lie here. This is why we should do this research. AI could reduce wasteful home practices. It could identify risks, health risks for people, suggest lifestyle changes. It can detect and alert to unusual events. It could make adaptations to the environment or suggest supports for social connection. It could allow us to achieve our goals better and tailor the home to different tasks. And it could indeed adapt to our changing personal, social, and cultural contexts and infrastructure. And this is just a snapshot. So this was just one day of discussion. So I'm sure there are many other suggestions from other AI experts of how AI could support home well-being and the local community. So just to conclude, again, this was also part of the harvest session conclusion. So the research priorities for me at the moment, coming from this research, for designing AI for home well-being, basically include, as I've said before, the creation of transdisciplinary, and I think it's very important that they are transdisciplinary. So transdisciplinary guidelines for defining and designing AI for home well-being. Um, the creation of these design research toolkits and training materials for creating a better understanding of user needs, different use cases, how we go about collecting the right data, how do we create and define appropriate evaluation metrics? Because arguably those evaluation metrics will have to change based on different social, personal, cultural situations. But again, how do we create them in the first place? What are those guidelines? Um, how can we collaborate with other disciplines and stakeholders in the design of AI? Again, creating a language or a framework to do this. And how can we then educate, empower, and include the diverse users in the co-design of AI? So these are all questions I'm grappling with at the moment as I try to create these design research toolkits. So that was just a flavor of some of the research I've previously done and some of the work I'm doing at the moment. Hope you have enjoyed that today. Just as a reminder, I'm Dr. Emily Corrigan-Kavanagh. I am currently a Surrey Future Fellow for Design for People-Centered AI at the Surrey People AI Institute. I've included a contact email at the bottom if you want to hear any more about my research or explore future collaborations. I've also included a link to the AI for Sound project, which some of this research is part of or was part of if you want to look up and learn a bit more about that particular project. But thank you very much for listening to me today.